The iron gates were taller than the dreams that had built the mansion behind them, and on that bright California morning, they stood locked against the very man who owned everything beyond them. Ethan Caldwell had not slept the night before. The sunrise painted the sky in soft shades of gold and blue, the kind of hopeful light that made people believe in fresh starts. He stood outside the sprawling white-stone mansion he had poured 15 years of his life into, wearing a simple navy button-down shirt with sleeves rolled to his forearms, dark jeans, and scuffed brown leather shoes. In his right hand, he held a paper bag with 2 blueberry muffins and a small carton of chocolate milk. In his left, he carried a framed drawing made in bright crayons, a stick figure man holding hands with a smaller stick figure boy under a crooked yellow sun. The guard at the gate did not recognize him. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in standing up for what is right even when it costs you everything, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel Kindness Matters. Stories like this remind us why humanity still matters. Ethan had built Caldwell Innovations from a borrowed laptop in a one-bedroom apartment in Sacramento. He had survived rejections, investor betrayals, and years of ramen dinners. But nothing had prepared him for being treated like a trespasser outside his own home. The guard, a tall man in a crisp black uniform, dark sunglasses reflecting the morning sun, had stepped in front of the biometric scanner and calmly informed Ethan that his access credentials were inactive. His voice had been polite but firm, the tone of someone trained to follow protocol without question. Ethan had initially assumed it was a glitch. Technology failed sometimes. Systems froze. People forgot to update databases. But when he reached for his phone to call his assistant, he saw dozens of missed calls from his ex-wife, Miranda Caldwell. Miranda had once been his partner in every sense of the word. They had met in college in Boston, 2 ambitious students with more dreams than money. She had loved his relentless drive in those early years. She had believed in him before investors ever did. But as Caldwell Innovations expanded, as meetings stretched into midnight and weekends disappeared into conference calls, the marriage thinned like paper left in the rain. Their divorce 2 years earlier had been controlled, almost surgical. No screaming matches, no public drama. Just paperwork, mediation, and shared custody of their 9-year-old son, Mason. Ethan had fought hard to keep the mansion because it was the only home Mason had truly known. The pool in the backyard, the treehouse they built together one summer, the basketball hoop over the driveway. Those things mattered more than square footage. And now, on a bright Tuesday morning, Ethan was locked out of it. He asked the guard to check again. The man shook his head and pointed discreetly toward a printed notice taped inside the security booth. It stated that by order of temporary legal directive, access privileges for Ethan Caldwell were suspended pending review. Pending review. Ethan felt something cold and unfamiliar settle in his chest. Not anger. Not yet. Something deeper. Something closer to betrayal. He tried calling Miranda again. No answer. He called his attorney, Franklin Pierce, a calm, silver-haired man who had handled the divorce with steady hands. Franklin answered on the second ring. His voice carried the weight of someone who already knew the storm that was coming. Miranda had filed an emergency petition late the previous evening, citing concerns about financial instability within Caldwell Innovations and alleged emotional distress affecting Ethan's ability to provide a stable environment for Mason. She had requested temporary exclusive control of the estate until a court hearing could determine custodial adjustments. Financial instability. The phrase tasted absurd. Caldwell Innovations had just secured a multi-million-dollar contract with a renewable energy firm in Texas. Ethan had spent months finalizing it. The company was stronger than ever, unless someone wanted it to look otherwise. The gates remained closed. Ethan stood there for several long seconds, staring at the house beyond the tall hedges. Sunlight glinted off the large windows. The fountain in the circular driveway sparkled peacefully, unaware of the human fracture unfolding at its edge. Then he saw movement. Mason appeared near the front steps, wearing a red hoodie and gray shorts, holding a soccer ball under his arm. He was searching the driveway, likely expecting to see his father's black SUV pulling in for their usual Tuesday morning breakfast before school. Ethan raised his hand instinctively. The guard shifted uncomfortably. Protocol required him to prevent interaction until legal confirmation was received. Ethan felt something inside him snap, not violently, but decisively. He asked the guard one final time to open the gate so he could at least hand his son the muffins. The guard refused again, apologizing under his breath. Ethan nodded slowly. He stepped back from the gate, pulled out his phone, and made 3 calls. The first was to Franklin, instructing him to prepare immediate counteraction. The second was to the head of human resources at Caldwell Innovations. The third was to his chief of security, Marcus Vance. Marcus had overseen security for the estate for 6 years. He was meticulous, loyal, and former military. Ethan had trusted him completely. When Marcus answered, Ethan asked one question. Who authorized the deactivation of my access? There was silence on the line. Marcus admitted that Miranda had arrived late the previous evening with legal documents and a request to temporarily adjust system credentials. The documents appeared valid. Marcus had followed procedure. Ethan asked if Marcus had called him to verify. Marcus admitted he had not. In that moment, Ethan understood something critical. It was not just about gates and codes. It was about judgment, about loyalty, about people choosing convenience over courage. By the time Ethan's black SUV returned an hour later, accompanied by 2 vehicles from the company's legal department, the bright morning had grown warmer. Neighbors had begun stepping outside, curious at the quiet tension hanging over the estate. Ethan walked back to the gate with calm precision. The legal team presented official documentation overturning the temporary restriction. Franklin had worked faster than anyone expected. The emergency petition lacked sufficient grounds, and the judge had declined to enforce exclusive control without formal hearing. The gate opened. Ethan walked through slowly, past the trimmed hedges and immaculate lawn. Mason ran toward him, confusion etched across his young face. Ethan knelt, holding him tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of sunscreen and laundry detergent. He handed Mason the muffins and the framed drawing. Mason smiled, unaware of the legal warfare unfolding around him. Inside the mansion, Miranda stood near the staircase, arms folded. Her expression was composed but strained. She had not anticipated such swift reversal. Ethan did not raise his voice. He did not create a scene. He simply walked to the security control room where Marcus and the on-duty team were gathered. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating dust particles suspended in still air. Ethan addressed them in a steady, measured tone. He explained that security was not merely about following orders. It was about protecting people and verifying truth. He stated that deactivating the homeowner's access without direct confirmation represented a breach of trust. Then, without dramatic flair, he terminated the entire security team effective immediately. There were gasps, shocked expressions. Some protested that they had only followed legal paperwork. Ethan acknowledged their compliance, but emphasized accountability. Protocol without discernment could destroy lives. By noon, a new interim security team arranged by Caldwell Innovations had arrived. They were instructed clearly, no changes to access privileges without direct confirmation from Ethan himself and legal counsel. The mansion felt different that afternoon. Not quieter, just heavier. Miranda retreated to her car and left before sunset. Ethan spent the rest of the day with Mason in the backyard. They played basketball under the bright sky. They repaired a loose plank on the treehouse. They talked about school projects and science fairs. Mason eventually asked why the gates had not opened that morning. Ethan chose his words carefully. He told his son that sometimes adults make decisions when they are afraid, and sometimes those decisions hurt people. But fear does not get the final say. Over the next week, the true storm revealed itself. An internal audit uncovered that someone had anonymously submitted concerns to Miranda suggesting that Caldwell Innovations was preparing for a risky merger. The information had been manipulated, designed to appear unstable. Further investigation traced the source to a former executive, Roland Mercer, who had been dismissed months earlier for unethical accounting practices. Roland had quietly partnered with a competitor, aiming to undermine Ethan's reputation and force leverage in future negotiations. Miranda, believing she was protecting her son from financial collapse, had acted hastily. When confronted with evidence, she broke down. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the living room windows as she sat across from Ethan at the long oak dining table, the same table where they had once celebrated funding rounds and Mason's birthdays. She admitted she had been frightened. The anonymous emails had been convincing. She had imagined headlines, lawsuits, instability. Ethan listened. For the first time since the gate incident, anger surfaced, but it was tempered by exhaustion. He reminded her that trust required communication. That fear should have brought her to him, not to legal action behind closed doors. Miranda apologized, not defensively, but genuinely. The court hearing scheduled for custody review became unnecessary. Miranda withdrew her petition publicly. She issued a written statement clarifying that Caldwell Innovations remained financially secure. Roland Mercer's attempts at sabotage unraveled quickly once exposed. Legal action followed. His competitor distanced itself to avoid scandal. But the true transformation was internal. Ethan realized that wealth did not guarantee security. Authority did not guarantee respect. And systems did not guarantee loyalty. He began restructuring not only his security protocols, but his leadership philosophy. He implemented mandatory verification procedures across the company, encouraging employees to question anomalies rather than obey blindly. He established a transparency council to ensure internal concerns were addressed openly before escalating. Most importantly, he rebalanced his life. Bright mornings were no longer reserved for investor calls. They belonged to Mason. School drop-offs replaced early board meetings twice a week. Weekend soccer games replaced networking events. The mansion gates still stood tall and imposing, but they no longer symbolized power. They symbolized responsibility. Months later, on another radiant day, Ethan hosted a company-wide family picnic on the estate grounds. Employees brought their children. Laughter echoed across the lawn. Mason proudly gave tours of the treehouse. Ethan stood near the fountain, watching sunlight ripple across water, reflecting on the morning he had been locked out. It had not been humiliation that defined him. It had been response. He could have retaliated harshly. He could have turned the custody dispute into war. He could have allowed ego to eclipse empathy. Instead, he chose accountability. If this story has touched your heart in any way, if it reminded you that integrity matters more than ego, and that courage sometimes looks like calm restraint, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Kindness Matters. Your support helps stories like this reach the people who need them most. And before we close, I have a special request. Comment the word integrity below if you believe doing the right thing is more powerful than being right. On a final golden afternoon, Ethan stood at the gate again, not locked out this time, but waiting for Mason to return from a weekend trip with his mother. The gates opened smoothly at his approach. The system recognized him instantly. But more importantly, the people inside did too. Mason ran toward him with the same unfiltered joy as before. Ethan lifted him high into the warm daylight, laughter rising freely into the open sky. The mansion remained large. The gates remained strong. But the true strength of that home no longer rested in steel or stone. It rested in trust rebuilt, fear confronted, and a father who chose love over pride. And sometimes, that is the most powerful security system of all.